Nathaniel Royce, a modest 79-year-old man, had always dreamed of owning a luxury car. On that day, he decided to step through the doors of a prestigious car dealership, his heart filled with hope. However, what was supposed to be a moment of joy quickly turned into humiliation. His simple appearance drew the disdain of the salespeople, who had no idea they were underestimating a man whose hidden fortune exceeded their wildest dreams. When he arrived in front of the grand glass facade of the dealership, the sun was shining brightly, reflecting the brilliance of the silver sign that proudly displayed the brand's name. Nathaniel adjusted his worn wool coat, his trembling hands betraying his anxiety. His shoes, though old, were well kept, but nothing about his appearance suggested that he was one of the wealthiest men in town, the owner of a thriving business. This discretion was a deliberate choice, as Nathaniel preferred to let his actions speak rather than his appearance. Upon entering the showroom, he was greeted by a luxurious atmosphere. The lights highlighted sparkling cars while soft music filled the air. Nathaniel couldn't help but admire the futuristic design of a model that caught his attention, caressing the smooth hood with his fingers. But as he immersed himself in the ambiance, a feeling of discomfort grew. The salespeople, in their impeccable suits, scrutinized him with palpable disdain. One of them, a young man with an arrogant demeanor, locked eyes with him before turning away to focus on a couple of buyers. Trying to remain stoic, Nathaniel moved toward another vehicle, but the unease intensified as indignant whispers reached his ears. "What's a guy like him doing here?" mocked one of the salespeople, followed by a stifled laugh from his colleagues. Despite his attempts to stay focused, Nathaniel felt a wave of anger and sadness overwhelm him. He approached the counter where a salesperson seemed absorbed by his screen. After a long moment of waiting, Nathaniel politely asked for information about the available models. The employee looked up, visibly annoyed. "We're very busy. Come back later," he retorted, not even hiding his impatience. A mix of humiliation and frustration gripped Nathaniel, but he refused to be disheartened. He approached the manager, Clinton, who looked down at him with disdain, suggesting he return at a more convenient time, reserving his attention for serious customers. Just as he thought about slipping away, a young, confident voice rang out behind him. "Excuse me, sir." Nathaniel turned to see a young man in his 20s, wearing the dealership's uniform, approaching with palpable determination. "Don't let their comments get to you. They know nothing about you." The words of this young man, full of sincerity, resonated like a breath of fresh air. Nathaniel, surprised by such kindness, smiled warmly at him, realizing that respect was far more valuable than any car. This gesture of solidarity left a lasting imprint on his heart. He left the dealership with renewed determination, a spark of hope in his eyes. That evening, as he sat in his dimly lit office, he reflected on the events of the afternoon. Rather than succumbing to anger, he chose to take action. Nathaniel picked up his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. On the other end of the line, a friendly voice greeted him. "Is that you, Nathaniel? What do I owe this call?" With calm determination, he explained his plan, revealing his intention to buy the dealership. "They need to learn to respect people, and I'm going to make sure they understand," he affirmed, his voice filled with resolve. Days passed, and within weeks, the wheels of his plan were set in motion. Nathaniel, with his network of contacts and resources, orchestrated the transaction in the shadows. 3 weeks later, the long-awaited moment arrived. He was officially the owner of the dealership. On the morning of the grand revelation, he got up, put on his worn coat, and took the wheel of his old car. The engine purred softly as he headed toward the place of his dreams. Arriving at the dealership, he paused for a moment to contemplate the facade, taking a deep breath as if to prepare for the coming storm. As he entered, the sound of his footsteps echoed on the polished floor, drawing Clinton's attention, who gave him a surprised look. "Can I help you?" he asked, not recognizing the man standing before him. Nathaniel pulled out a thick envelope from his coat and presented it to the manager, a mysterious smile on his face. Clinton, intrigued, leafed through the documents, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "Is this a joke?" he stammered, his hands trembling. "This is an acquisition, and not just any acquisition." Nathaniel replied in a calm voice, like that of a peaceful lake. The other employees, curious, had gathered around them, whispers spreading like wildfire. The tension was palpable. "This means I am the new owner of this dealership," Nathaniel declared, his determined gaze anchoring his authority. The air was thick with a mix of disbelief and nervousness. Nathaniel, filled with confidence, firmly announced, "From today on, changes will be made. I am here to make a difference." The audacity of this humble man, who had been scorned just weeks earlier, surprised everyone. The mocking laughter was replaced by looks of admiration and respect. Nathaniel had proven that appearance did not define a person's worth. And so, on that day, in that car dealership, a lesson was learned. Respect and dignity transcend status and appearance.